Ladies and gentlemen, season 7 of ODL is upon us. We're back. It's been a hot minute. Doubles killed us. Champions brought us right back. Anyways, I'm actually not doing it alone this time, this tier list. I actually have along with me two of my fellow competitors. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Let's start with Steve.
Heyo, I'm Steve, Utah Treacherous Excadrilles.
And also with me is Notorious Threat, Papa Francisco.
Hey everybody.
You'll probably recognize him from the more traditional tier list videos, which actually this one is too. I didn't randomize the order this time. I actually put in some thought for like half an hour, came up with like an actual order, and we all just averaged ours out. So, without further ado, let's just get right into it. We're gonna work from back to front. It's a very weird set of teams because normally we would always say that every team is at least decently good that can always just win games. I think we can all agree that there's a couple teams that maybe didn't quite understand the assignment.
I like to think of it that they're taking the challenge run. You know, it's like you win a draft league using only mons 15 points or less. And I think challenge will be the correct approach for them, because I think some teams are going to struggle with by just not having answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the team that can mess up a stronger roster on a good week, but I don't know about a longer season.
That is going to be the issue with these first couple teams. Starting off right now with Mystery Eliminator. On top of just having 30 spare points in the bucket, I'm seeing a massive Ghost Week this. I didn't realize you could draft a team with that many Ghost Week Pokemon.
Yeah, there's the resist is also not ideal. Lipard not exactly the bulkiest, so we'll see like what the strategy ends up being for patching that. I think some of the monsters are cool. I think Beedrill is maybe a little underrated, so it'll be exciting to see if something can be done with that. But yeah, I think this team is just missing like walls in general. It's gonna have a hard time, more on the special side than the physical side, but I think it's going to be pretty frail and hard to switch into things.
Yeah, I think that it suffers from long game stability problem, where these things don't seem like they're going to last through a very long game. This team, in my opinion, will want to stay ahead offensively, or else it might have a big chance of collapsing due to its awkward defensive typings.
Yeah, like we were saying, Papa, the only special walls I can see are kind of Togekiss, and then Iron Crown after a Calm Mind can qualify as a special wall, I guess. But no special defense really to speak of other than that. Mega Beedrill always looks fantastic until you realize it doesn't get a single move up of 80 base power, and you just kind of have to live with that. So the 150 attack just is nowhere near as impressive as it should be. If it got Mega Horn, it's a good Pokemon. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, adaptability's nice to power it up, but unless you get like a cool Fell Stinger sweep or something like that, I think it might have a hard time with some of the bulkier mons, especially just steel types in general.
Oh yeah, steel types also mess up this team a fair bit.
Yeah, I will at least give it this. It does have a decent bit of threat when you have momentum between Beedrill pivoting into like Iron Crown. That can be a legitimate threat if you're not expecting it.
Very true.
Especially with the electric terrain. There's some things it can do here. I mean, realistically, I think this team should look to maybe make some transactions later on in the season if things aren't going well, and abandon the challenge run. But for now, I'm interested to see how they'll do.
Yeah, there might be something here that we just can't see, but we can't see it, so therefore we're rating it low. So
Yeah, hazards might become an issue.
also true. I guess let's move on to the next team, which is Howling Wolf, new coach for the season. And
Yeah, this one's This one's pretty interesting because we don't know much about Howling Wolf as a coach, so we get to evaluate the team kind of on its own, which is what we try to do in all of these. And we did aggregate 5 different coaches' rankings for this order. Um, but here we have a truly new coach that none of us, at least ranking, have experience with. They also chose not to spend a large chunk of their points. I do think this team is a decent bit more balanced than the other team. It has some defensive options with things like Arcanine and Suicune. Corviknight also providing that. It's a little bit it's a little bit less offensively focused. They might be able to play out the long game, and that might actually be what they look for with their win con, with maybe some defensive setup like Suicune or Corviknight or even Komao. But ultimately, it just feels like it's a little bit budget. It feels like all the points weren't spent, which is true.
Yeah, on this one, I can definitely see your point. It does have a much better defensive structure than the previous team that we looked at. Even Credilli does count as it could be a decent defensive. So it has good longevity, and it's got a decent defensive typing spread. But the problem with this team is I don't see a way to break through bulky steals or like pressure any kind of regen or passive play consistently.
Yeah, steel types especially. Like, there's only 2 stab types on this team as a whole that even threaten steel types. Your 2 megas are completely walled by steel types. Hatterene gets messed up by steel types. Lycanroc thunks into steel types. Cradilly, if it decides to go offensive, can't do anything with steel types either. It's honestly a good thing they drafted Corviknight, because if someone else had taken Corviknight, Corviknight would have 1v6 their entire team.
Yeah, and on top of that, the speed options are kind of weak. The only speed options you really have that break 100 are going to be Lycanroc, Sceptile, and Boltund. And Boltund is low impact structurally. Sceptile can struggle versus bulky teams, so it's kind of rough in the speed category as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, does Mega Sceptile even get like Nasty Block, try to boost through something? I don't think it does.
Sword Stance, that's about it.
Oh, you get Sword Stance too.
I do like this Fairy Dragon Steel with Corviknight, Como, and either Meganium or Hatterene is pretty nice. Like I think there's even the Firewater Grass options here are also pretty strong. Arcanine Suicune is a cool match. I just think honestly you could just maybe trade up on some of the later picks and then you'd have a really like well-defined team. I think it will be nice. They'll be able to see either they'll be able to take wins early in the season, or they'll be able to see kind of how opponents are taking advantage or what mons they're just not able to bring, and maybe have some targets for some trade opportunities.
Yeah, because I think everything Corviknight and to the left of it is like a solid enough Pokemon that if you're just trying to spread a budget throughout a whole roster, that looks like a pretty decent squad. It's just that the last 4 don't reflect still using all of the points to make a whole squad. Because if this was just a full squad of like that sort of power level, where you could just like play mind games of what you're bringing every week, that could be kind of a way to try to manufacture an advantage. But as of right now, there's like 7 or 8 Pokemon that you have to really worry about, and then the last 4 are kind of almost there to fill space.
Yeah, this one, I mean, I respect how balance-oriented it is. I mean, it's got some solid defensive fundamentals. It's got decent setup potential, and it's got a good amount of utility that can compete. But it lacks a very strong offensive pressure. It doesn't have that great of speed control. And it's inefficient with its points. I mean, it could absolutely win games with careful, like, plotting, but you will probably need a lot more prep and execution against other teams here.
Alright, sounds like that's all of our thoughts there. Moving on to the next team in the order, we have Frostfur. Now, unfortunately, Meowstic Mega's sprite isn't loading, but that's Mega Meowstic right there.
We'll blame Caleb.
Yeah, sounds good. There's another thing we can blame Caleb for later too. You'll see. But this is the team that used all its points. I like Megalophony. I like Excalibur, Goldengo as well. I don't know. It just feels off to me. I can't really explain why. If you guys have any better sort of explanations.
Yeah, this one there's a bit of a jump here, and I think it's just by virtue of having higher value mons in general. But the teams start getting pretty hard to rank, especially in the middle of the pack here. This team has good hazards and good removal, but a lot of it is actually just Gliscor. And it's probably not going to want to do both every week. It can. Talonflame is okay removal, but you might want to run it offensive and stuff like that. So it's like okay. It's got okay speed. Talonflame and Lopunny are definitely fast. Meowstic as well, but you'll either only bring Meowstic or Lopunny. You can't bring both. And it's got good offense. Like Bax is scary, Keldeo is scary, Lopunny and Meowstic are also strong. But I don't know. It just doesn't feel. None of those things stick out as being like to the point where it's something that you have to really pay attention to, or like um, blowing everything else out of the water. On top of that, I think it might be this one is also just a little special vulnerable as well, similar to the last team where we mentioned that. It just feels like maybe there's not as many mons here or as many options to deal with some of the really powerful special threats in the format.
I absolutely agree on that. This team, I mean, it has some good immunities. It's got some good pivoting. You got Hazard Denial from Goldango, and if it pops out screens, I mean, Bax Caliber can easily become a game-ending threat under screens. But at the same time, it is very vulnerable to special breakers. I mean, if you have a special breaker that goes, there's not much here that's going to resist it. There's no real long game recovery option in this, and a lot of these are more offensively oriented Pokemon, so they're not exactly that durable. So you're probably going to be looking at a team here that prefers tempo more than stability.
Yeah, the only real defensive backbone of this team is Gliscor, and also Mega Meowstic was certainly a choice because Mega Alakazam was still on the board at the time. So I think it's kind of a debate as to which one you think is better. I think a lot of people would say Alakazam is better. Even just being able to bring its base form without an item is probably better than Meowstic base form without an item.
Yeah, it's possible that they wanted Lopunny, and so they wanted to go with a new Mega for the other slot, but yeah, I agree. I mean, Meowstic, we all kind of thought that it was maybe just a weaker form of Zam, just based on the stats and the ability and the typing. It just doesn't do much. I'd argue that Prankster makes it maybe a little more useful in its non-Mega form, but yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just a lot of mons that are good at what they do, and a couple that are the best at what they do. Maybe talking about like Goldango, for example. But no, I don't know. I think I would have liked to see Snow on this team, honestly, with Bax Caliber and even Glaceon. I think a Snow component could have been cool. I just don't know where to fit it in. Maybe instead of Kabutops, I don't know. He seems a little out of place on the team.
Oh
Yeah, I can agree there. Snow would have made this team take off pretty hard with an Ice Body Bax Caliber, but even then, I mean, this team has some good matchup flexibility. You can run screens, you can run hazard stacking, you can run webs, kind of fast pivot offense kind of deal. And I mean, Scarf Keldeo is something you got to watch out for. Megalopunny's good on speed. Talonflame with the priority. So there's still a lot of good there. but I do agree that uh, Ice would have probably been a good addition to this team in order to buff both Baxcalibur and Glaceon.
Yeah, Baxcalibur, probably the biggest game-ending threat that's going to try to be the main focus as far as like trying to win an endgame. So any help you can give it, even if it's just like a defense boost, that's absolutely massive and probably would win a game or two almost immediately.
It's also worth mentioning Lopunny did get Swords Dance, which it didn't have access to before, which could mean that it was under tiered
Oh,
going into the draft. So I think that was a pretty smart pickup.
I
Yeah,
did not know that.
huh, I didn't either.
That might be
Yeah, this.
something we'll have to watch out for. We might actually have to pay attention to this team.
Strats leaked.
Oops,
Yep,
sorry.
it's. Yeah, it's not as structurally airtight, but it definitely has the tools to overwhelm teams, especially if you have too few walls in order to actually take on the offense.
Alright. Next up, we have Arctic Money with the Sun team. There's bound to be one.
Yep. Yeah, most weathers will have a team, and to be honest, this team has a lot of the structural issues that Sun typically sees. You've got a lot of unignorable threats that take advantage of the Sun and make it very hard to deal with them in the Sun. I actually don't mind the double setter, especially since one of them is the Mega, which will help in opposing weather matchups. But one of them can actually hold the Heat Rock, which may be needed if somebody's going to try and take advantage of switching and stalling out the Sun. I think the double dragons are good offensively, and gouging fire is a real threat even not under Sun. This team is going to have hazard issues because Charizard doesn't want to defog and can't run heavy duty boots, so you're going to have Tusk basically always being forced to spin, when under Sun it would maybe rather be clicking those really high base power ground or fighting moves, which I think is a little unfortunate. And then Ghost Spam is actually going to be really effective against this team, which could be an issue since Ghost is typically kind of a free typing to click if the enemy team doesn't have a normal type.
Yeah, this team, when looking at it on the surface level, it is a Sun team, but it has some ridiculously strong offense. I mean, you've got your core offense of Walking Wake, Gouging Fire, Charizard Mega Y, Slitherwing. They're all very, very dangerous threats, especially since a lot of these threats overload the same defensive answers. So, like, a lot of the physical walls get melted by Z or Zard Y. Fire resists get pressured by Tusk and Wake, and water resists don't exactly do well into Wake either.
It's certainly like the Sun team, like everything you would want out of a Sun team. It's just kind of a test of how good Sun actually is when everybody knows it's coming. Because like if this was a ladder team, like 6 of those first 7 Pokemon, it's an amazing ladder team. I just don't know how it does when people have a week to prepare for it, essentially.
Yeah, I do like the Victory Bell gets Chlorophyll in its non-mega form, which is a good reason to bring it. And then if you need to sack it to eliminate a threat with Innards Out, that's cool. Just like an interesting interaction, a smart way of using maybe like a more niche Victory Bell draft.
Innards Out was certainly a choice by Game Freak.
I think it's cool. I just wish it had a higher base health.
Yeah. Base 80's just not cutting it for that purpose.
Yeah, and I like this team's setup because it actually has a sturdier build than like a pure hyper offensive Sun team. because you've got like the defensive backbone of Tusk, Bronzong, Screamtail, Pheasantipity, because Tusk will, take care of the removal, rocks, and do some physical checking. Bronzong helps patch out some of those weaknesses. Screamtail is really good with the speed control, and it's got a good amount of support utility. And then Pheasantipity is, well, Pheasantipity.
Yeah, I'm looking at the type matchup chart and kind of losing matchup to a lot of types. So this team's going to be really good if they can keep playing from ahead and keep any sort of opposing threat from snowballing. But I fear that if something else gets going, it's not going to have a ton of tools to stop it, especially because photosynthesis isn't always going to be speed. So there may not always be the right revenge killer. Like Walking Wake, probably the best example of like boosting speed to try to revenge kill something. But that's only 109 speed. If something faster has a Dragon Dance sub, this team might be screwed.
Yeah, or if their sun is down, I think then this team gets a lot weaker. So it's just really reliant. It's probably a good thing they have double setters then.
Yeah, I agree. The biggest weakness of this team is its heavy sun dependency, because if you manage to deny the weather, or Zard Y or Ninetales is pressured early, then it becomes a very big problem for this team.
And the thing is, we have all 4 weather teams, I believe, or at least we have teams that can set all 4 weathers. So,
oh yeah, which is interesting this time around.
It's going to be a very fun season just to watch those, because weather wars are always just fun, in my opinion. It's a great time. All right, next up we have Winter, who doesn't have the Hail team. He went Sand this time around. At least mini Sand.
Brown Hail. Desert Hail. I was so sold on this team from just the first 2 mega picks, which I thought were really cool. Just kind of like niche options that you can bring either or every week as part of like a Sand team. And if you really want to run Sand, then you still get to use basically itemless drill, which can be pretty strong. And was kind of the theory of how maybe it would be best used would be on a Sand team where you kind of flex whether you're going to mega it or not. Dracovish is obviously like the main threat on this team, but it's also well paired with Darkrai to give some special presence that I think the team might have been missing otherwise. I will say that I mean, Garchomp can run special, but outside of the Sand, all of the special attacks are like outside of the Sand core, and all the physical attackers are part of the Sand core, which is a little, I think, like split. And I'll be interested to see in how well he can manage like either running a hybrid weather team or even like a non-weather mode. Especially given that he's got quite a few overlapping typings, especially like having drafted 3 ground types in the first 3.
Yeah, as far as this goes, this looks like the run-of-the-mill Sand team. I mean, you've got your Sand Setter, you've got your Garchomp, your Dracovish, but I think that Darkrai and Raikou also give a very good touch in their special pressure. This team has a very it has a lot of independent I win if unchecked kind of factors. So if you don't have checks for these, they will just run through your team.
Yeah, Dracovish is always good. I think Extra without an item is really good, like still. And like being able to Mega Evolve into, what was that, base 165 attack, you find the right spot, and that's just unstoppable. Garchomp Mega can also be run just as the base form if you want more speed, which always an option. I think another theme that I'm seeing again here is the special bulk isn't great. You've got Primarina, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, I do agree on that. This one is not the strongest in its defensive structure. You got Hippowdon, Primarina, and Moltres as your kind of defensive options. And I mean, Hippowdon provides sand and a lot of physical backbone. Primarina is unfortunately delegated to the special glue of this. Moltres is decent with its defensive utility and pivoting, but this lacks any type of long-term recovery, and it relies on offensive pressure to stay safe. This is a pressure first, defend second kind of roster.
Not to
I just
mention,
wanna
a lot of
see
the
Winter.
walls are also chipped by their own sand, so even
Yeah.
then, that you're kind of fighting into your own longevity there a little bit.
I just want to see Winter pull some wacky Smeargle sets. I just want to see some moves that I've never even heard of before.
He is going to schmix me at some point. And then Darkrai, I believe, gets Destiny Bond, so forget about that.
Just lead Smeargle, Spore something, then Darkrai can be happy.
Yeah. Smeargle definitely brings a very interesting factor to this. That being said, even without it, you've got decent flexibility in this. It's got somewhat bulky offense options, not the greatest, but it does have the special offense core and the physical sand core, so it's very well balanced on the offensive side. And even on hazards, this thing looks like it'll be a little bit annoying between Glimmet, Smeargle with utility, Spore, and Webs, Cleavor, and then Sandchip. You've got a lot of hazards going on here that are going to be unforgiving.
Yeah, and all it takes is a little bit for Dracovish to truly take over. I feel like Dracovish is like the centerpiece of this team in probably the most extreme way we've seen yet from all the teams, where like there's like public enemy number one right there, and everyone else is just trying to get that thing set up in the right spot.
Yeah, you need to have a check for Dracovish because Fishious Rend in Sand, it's a nuclear bomb if you do not have a water absorb or a very high resistance option. So something in order to take care of that with Sand Rush, or even if you run like a Choice Scarf Strong Jaw in order to fake them out during Sand, sorry, leak the tech, that is also an option.
Alright, next up we have Downtown, who took Skarmory Mega, which I was absolutely thinking of picking until something else fell in my lap, but we'll get to that later.
Boo, boo, Skarmory Mega.
It's
I
such a weird mon. Like, it has one thing it's trying to fish for, and like, it's pretty obvious. You're trying to get that weak armor Swords Dance in the same turn, and then all of a sudden you're unstoppable, which, if it works out, is really good.
It's got those big feet too. Look at those things.
You know what they say about guys with big feet? Wait a second.
Look at the shoes, look at the money.
I think the Psy spam team has been, we've seen that before. This
We've
is
seen
kind
a
of a different
lot.
iteration of that. I'm never a big fan of Psy Terrain plus Zam. I think you're just kind of overlapping, like, I don't know. Yes, Expanding Force is hard to switch into, and yes, it does a lot of damage, but you have to get Zam in the terrain, and like, Indeedee's kind of slow for doing that, and usually the things that you'll use to check Indeedee would be the same things you'd use to check Zam. So it seems a little strange to me that we keep seeing those two combined. I do really like Sneasler on this team though. I think that's kind of an unburdened classic, probably the best one in the format. So I think that's another direction that can pair with the terrain setting that's here, and take advantage of the fact that it'll be the fastest thing and there won't be any priority that can be used against it.
Yeah, this team was one of my higher rated ones because, I mean, this thing stands out in offensive power like crazy. Like Urshifu Rapid Strikes is one of the best draft breakers. Roaring Moon can just sweep teams outright if you're not prepped. Sneasler with Unburden plus, the pressure from Dire Claw. Cerulege can snowball if you get it set up, and Alakazam Mega is just an immediate offensive tempo. This thing does not have one win condition, it has multiple independent sweep paths, so making prep for this is actually kind of difficult.
I think this might be one of the better additions of Psychic Terrain we've seen, simply because there's a lot of fighting types to try to break through the obvious dark type switch-ins that, like, you're obviously going to bring because you don't want to get run over by Mega Zam, Psychic, and Psychic Terrain.
Yeah, as far as it goes, the defense on this is actually surprising too for such an offensive rush. I mean, you have like Amoonguss and Empoleon, Skarmory, Ib, not Megad, Gligar. These are all pretty good for like pivoting core. They're strong defensive physical backbone, good status and spore control, decent hazard synergies. It's honestly enough to support a hyper offensive front without like immediately collapsing.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the game-winning defense that you'd find at the top end of the points pool, but it's the reliable backbone that can provide like switch-ins and doesn't just let things come in for free. And Empoleon providing hazard control will be quite important, I think, for this team.
I suppose hazards are a little bit of a struggle because Gligar, for all of its great points, it's still a not fully evolved Pokemon, and that's the source of most of the hazards. You're not really running Toxic Spikes on Sneasler, so like you have Rocks on Empoleon. It's kind of maybe the most consistent hazards you're ever going to bring. But like outside of that, it's a really good team.
Yeah, as far as the hazard game goes, I mean, this is good, but it's not oppressive. Skarmory Mega, Skarmory can provide some hazard if he wants to go that route. Gligar can contribute to the utility installing. Empoleon's, flexible, it can throw out Stealth Rock. But this team is going to rely much more on tempo than chip accumulation, but it's still a strong enough hazard game to support the sweepers. As far as it goes, I think the biggest downside I can see on this team is the reliance on momentum. Because if the opponent successfully slows them down, forces hazards, or removes the insane speed control of Zam and Sneasler and Roaring Moon, then this team actually can become possibly manageable.
Yeah, I agree. I think something this team wouldn't like is to have webs up, which is why Empoleon is helpful against that, because it can get rid of it and also dissuade it with competitive. I think it's a good addition here.
I would say definitely like higher tier caliber as far as most draft teams go.
Yet somehow still in our bottom half, just barely. Next up,
Somehow.
yeah, we have a lot of cracked teams here at the top. Next up, we've got Mr. Papa himself, who went Mega Delphox, Mega Binet. You want to explain your thought process behind this?
Yeah, I liked Mega Delphox. I thought it was maybe one of the more undervalued megas. It gets a lot of interesting moves just by virtue of being a starter. It just tends to have a little bit more diversity in what it can do. 12 Mons was interesting this season. Allows for some more repeat typing in some things and maybe a little bit more flexibility in the draft as long as budget is managed okay. I kind of just tried to go about as balanced as I could here. I tried to draft a few things that I thought would be more fun that I hadn't used before, like Hydrapple, a couple things that I think can be really good. I think maybe some of the weaknesses of the team is that Treads has a lot that it needs to do, which is why I drafted some backup typings for it so that it can be allowed to do those things without leaving my team open to not having a ground type that fulfills the typical ground type role or a steel type in the same position. Because I'm going to need it for either hazards or control, or using it as that like flex speed option since the team is a little slow. I usually don't like to have my Mega be my fastest since they can't be scarfed. But overall, I'm not too upset about the team. I think there's a couple hidden gems here that I'm excited to play with.
Yeah, you drafted a very slow team. Like, compared to, you're going to see a lot of other teams up towards the top that are averaging probably close to 20 points higher speed. It's kind of a stark difference. But you went with a lot of bulk, and I like it. Arachnid, boy, I have memories of that Arachnid. Magnezone I just always loved because steel types are usually so important to a defensive structure, so being able to trap them and try to eliminate them almost for free can be game-winning in some matchups. Let's see, Urshifu kind of lost its ability, but doesn't really matter because Protect in singles is little unused. But it's a very structured team, I'll give you that.
Yeah, this team is what I would say is a pretty good staple look of a bulky offensive team. I mean, the roster, from what I can tell, it revolves around Urshifu, Zygarde, Feeny, Treads, but it also has some crazy support from Magnezone's trapping, Hydrapple's sustain, Weezing's utility, and Delphox's amazing special pressure. Like, Urshifu is naturally terrifying to deal with. Pair that with this special pressure from Delphox and even like Zygarde, and just those three alone can force some very uncomfortable prep because of just how hard they are to deal with.
But yeah,
Bellybolt's going to be the MVP. I love that thing.
it is very
Absolutely.
underutilized, I'll give you that. I think you got used a lot very early on in ladder, but I just haven't seen it used a lot in drafts. I'm excited to see what you do with it, because knowing you're going to do some wacky stuff with it. It's going to show up to our game, and it's going to take 3 kills and completely ruin any hope I had of making playoffs or something. I don't know. That's just how our games go.
Yep, as far as it goes, the only thing that's really limiting this team is its speed control, but I mean, you have some options with that. There are some very good Scarf users here, and Delphox helps seal that speed gap that people aren't expecting from the rest of your team. So, it is definitely, it might not be naturally fast, but is still definitely manageable because the defensive backbone of this team is just so good and set up.
Webs going to ruin someone. I'm willing to bet right now. Someone's going to get Webs.
Webs.
It's going to absolutely mess them up for the rest of their week.
I think Arachnid's becoming my signature guy.
I think it is.
Webs is how this team set, just exactly like you said. That's going to ruin someone's week.
Alright. Moving on. Next up we have Roku, who got the Rain team. And Mega Lamar
Yeah, I mean,
for some reason.
You can't really go wrong with Rain, honestly. It's kind of hard to build a bad Rain team. That being said, this one has some unique stuff going on, and I don't think it... Sometimes the issue that Rain runs into is that it's quite dependent on Rain, and usually only has one setter that is usually not the best Mon, because you're either stuck with Pelipper or Politoed, which are fine, but they're not great, and they're usually susceptible to getting one-shot. Or in Pelipper's case, chipped down by rocks. But I do think this team has options outside of Rain, with Glimora and Dragapult mainly heading that up, which can do some interesting things, especially Glimora, which just hits really, really hard. and also has some speed outside of the rain, which is sometimes another issue that we can see, where even if you do bring your rain, you end up losing because in the late game you don't have rain to sweep with either Swampert or like Ludicolo.
This team is interesting because it looks like a rain team on the surface, but in reality, the only two that are going to be sweeping with rain, or three, are going to be Swampert, Ludicolo, and maybe Zapdos with Hurricane Spam. But outside of that, Glimmora is going to be very dangerous, as you said. Metagross gives a reliable physical pressure. And as far as it goes, this team can really force opponents into bad trades because it is set up with excellent chip damage options.
So yeah, the Rain Core it's definitely not as all-in as other Rain teams. Like, we've only got 3 Swift Swimmers. One of them is a low tier. You got Swampert Mega, who, at least in my experience, wasn't quite powerful enough for when I used Rain, at least. Maybe Roke will be able to paddle it better. But Zapdos is just good in and out of Rain, so it's just always a solid choice. Metagross benefits from Rain by virtue of not having a fire weakness. Dragapult gets more damage on Surf, I guess? Like, there's more than just the Rain mons that can take advantage of the Rain, which I think makes this a little bit better than just spamming a whole bunch of water types in their general direction and praying to God it works.
This one, I look at the Rain, but the thing that I'm much more scared of on this is that Hazard game, because, I mean, it has webs, it has spikes, it has T-spikes, it has rocks, and you can even use Glimmora to set up toxic debris if you let it get hit before you do anything. So, I mean, combined with, like, Dragapult's power, it gets pretty oppressive really quickly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I like Overquill on this Rain team too. It can be your like a backup sweeper, but it can also just be utility with some, you know, some uncomfortable stab dark moves or some tech like Destiny Bond or hazards or I think even Boom if it wants to.
Yeah, and I mean, even talking about this team in a defensive option, it's actually pretty sturdy. I mean, between Zapdos, Umbreon, Miltank, pretty good defensive option. It's got good status management. It's got reliable pivots. It's got decent longevity. And it's got a couple forms of speed mitigation. So this is definitely a much better team for playing the long game than a lot of the other drafts that we have seen before this.
For sure. I just looked at all the momentum names. Dear God, you can bring an entire team that's just momentum spam, and it's honestly not even that bad of a team.
This is like crazy pivots and crazy hazards, so I can see why it's been this far up.
Alright, next up at number 4 is Me, Myself, and I. I suppose I'll explain my thought process. I never expected Mega Floet to get to me. And that's kind of why I didn't take Mega Skarmory, but it's this super powerful fairy type. It's got Xerneas' ability to boost fairy moves. Calm Mind Sweeper, kind of a Flutter Mane, essentially, sort of in what it wants to do. Like, not quite as fast, but it's like somehow even more damaging. And then after that, I basically made it my entire mission with my first 4 or 5 picks afterwards to try to make sure to make opposing Steel and Fairy types' lives as much of a living hell as possible. So, delayed Mega to try to be physical, if I, for some reason, didn't want to bring Mega Floet. Landorus, Chi-Yu, both to just kind of really harass Steel types. Chien-Pao is just something really fast. Spectrier, because it was still available. And then I sort of kind of flailed around with the bottom half picks. Mola and Clodsire are gonna show up probably a fair bit, just because I like the two of them as mons. And then Fortress, Aurora's Morgan, Jupiter are just kind of, they have a role, technically. How big that role will be, we shall see. But they at least have something that they can theoretically do.
Yeah, I think this team is... I really like the way the defensive mons were chosen to complement the offense is pretty obvious on this team. I don't think there's anybody who needs to be explained why Floette, Landorus, Chiyu, Chenpao, and Spectre can put holes in your team or sweep your team. I'd argue there's maybe more breakers than sweepers here, but I think the line gets a little blurred with some of these mons, especially depending on what sets and what items you choose to run. And the defensive mons help those out quite a lot. Like some of the legendaries here that are your offensive threats benefit a lot from getting wish passed, which Elemola is potentially the best at doing out of the entire pool. And Clodsire provides good special backing, which the team pretty much needed at this point. The only couple of holes that I see is that, honestly, I think if you ever break any of the last three, you're probably making an error in team building. Unless there's like a really unique set or you really want screens or webs or something. But it just never feels like the opportunity cost would pay off there. And I also think that Fortress has a lot of jobs to do on this team, which it is a good mon, but I don't know if it can be stretched that far, especially if people are preparing to be able to knock it down, because I think once it's gone, there's a lot of there's gaps that start appearing here. And then there's a bit of a flying weakness, which isn't the biggest deal, but flying spam is pretty reliable already, so not having a good resist to that is a little unfortunate.
So I'm not gonna lie, when I was looking at this team, this is probably actually the team that I am most scared about, Agent. Well done on that.
Well, thank you.
Because I mean, the offensive ceiling in this team is ridiculously absurd, and unlike some other like hyper offensive drafts I've seen in the past, it also has defensive glue and utility compression to stay structurally coherent. So I mean, let's take a look at this. You got, Chenpao, Chiyu, Spectre, Landorus, Galay, Floette. You can't realistically prep for all of those without becoming vulnerable elsewhere. And on top of that, you have wish support, hazard utility, status absorption, defensive pivoting. I mean, the defensive pieces exist primarily to create safe entry for your absurd breakers, which is exactly what you want with absurd breakers. Your speed control, I mean, you have some crazy speed, Spectre, Chenpao, Scarf Chiyu, and while it's an interesting option as a 1-point pick, if Dupiter ever gets a web off, that can ruin someone's entire day. Like, just a Scarf is all it needs. The only real weakness I can see on this is that the defensive margin for error is really thin. Even though the defensive backbone is solid, it's still fundamentally an offensive first team. So if hazards get out of control on your side, your revenge killers die early, or the momentum flips in the opponent's danger, a game can become really dangerous for you. But that's the only thing I can see about it.
It's definitely a very different team for me, because I'm used to, like, I wouldn't just have 2 primary defensive mods. I'd usually take, like, 4 on, like, most of my teams. So I'm excited to see how I play with this compared to, like, how I usually do. It's going to be a fun time either way. I just get to click the big funny moves, and so much dopamine comes from that.
You get to click the big funny moves, and someone gets to suffer that day.
Oh, yeah. Alright, next up, the other guy who went with arguably an even more extreme draft point strategy than I did, it's Snarfy with the how did we let this happen electric terrain core.
Yeah, I also, whoever's paying attention will note that the top 3 teams ended up being the first 3 in the draft. So I think if we ever do this format again, we'll re-randomize the draft after the mega picks get picked. Because I think they essentially got first pick on megas and then first pick on regular,
Yeah.
which was not well thought out by me. So I apologize for us later half drafters, but it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, okay. I'm a hater on the strategy of spend all your points and then get 3 mons that you'll never bring. I think that slots are more valuable than getting a higher tier mon. So I'd honestly rather have seen one less high point pick and upgrade those like 1-pointers to 3 or 4-pointers that can actually have like a viable reason to come. Because if I had this issue with your team, Agent, I doubly have this issue with this team. If you're bringing Gumshoe, Zilamize, or Golem, even if your opponent did no prep for them at all, they're happy to see them because it just means that you didn't bring anything else on this team. And honestly, I'd argue that for Crab Mega as well, but that's kind of part of the format, so that's not really a dig on the draft itself. If you ignore the last 3 columns, however, this team is pretty undeniably crazy. It's got really good speed, even outside of terrain. A lot of these mons are just naturally fast, and it's got like a ton of offensive pressure. This and the last team actually feel like they function very similarly, whereas this one has a terrain component, but outside of that, they're just pressuring you with things that are just very hard to switch into, like Metagross and Bundle, and Valiant, which just lack traditional switch-ins. Valiant especially, since it can be physical or special, it's really adaptable in draft and really good in builder to be able to have that. There is some reliance on Coco setting up terrain, and it's not like you really want to run terrain extender all the time on Coco since it really likes items, which is a little unfortunate, but not the biggest problem since you're not like, it's not like this team can't function without terrain. It's just going to require like smart building with it. The main issue that I have with this team is Heatran, kind of like Fortress on the last team, just kind of has to do a lot. A lot of your key resistances and the fact that your defenses are short up are very dependent on Heatran, which means the offensive mons that have good ground coverage or even just general chip with either hazards or forcing it in quite a bit make this team a little less effective and more prone to being able to be swept. But it is kind of hard to sweep Bundle or Valiant under electric terrain, so maybe it's not as big of a worry as it could be otherwise.
Yeah, the offensive power of this team is very strong because the core is Valiant, Coco, Bundle, even Hydragion, and even though it's a 7-point pick, Superior could get out of control with Contrary. And of course, let's not address the elephant in the room, looking at you, Metagross Mega. It's especially threatening with Coco being able to have pivot options into 2 really good Quark drivers. And of course, Metagross and Heatran would be causing you to have some defensive compromises. Very few teams can actually comfortably answer all of the offensive threats on this team, but the problem also lies within how sturdy the defensive backbone of this team is. The core defenses are going to be Lando, Heatran, and Metagross. Those are already very solid, but then you add on Hydragion's resist profile, the utility from Tapu Koko, and certain superior sets, and suddenly the team has excellent pivoting and defensive flexibility. The speed control on this team is ridiculous. This team has a job, and it is going fast. And it's got excellent roll compression between Heatran handling hazards and status and trapping. Lando compresses rocks, pivots, physical checks. Coco deals with speed and momentum. Valiant's special, physical, unpredictable. So it could be either on either week. The biggest weaknesses of this team that I see, though, are indeed the bottom end roster drop off. I mean, like you said, Gumshoes, Illumise, Golem, it's a massive drop off compared to everything else. But another thing to keep an eye out for is that there is actually some strain on this team from ice and ground. Despite Landorus and Heatran being amazing, strong ground and ice combinations can still pressure, especially if Bundle is forced aggressively. It's not a fatal flaw, but it is a possible exploit.
Yeah, and another thing, we talked about how like Heatran, Landorus, Metagross are kind of like the defensive structure of this team. None of them get recovery, so they can be worn down. It will probably take more than one go at them for the most part, but damage will stick to this team, which doesn't have like a true defensive staple in the way that mine had Alomomola, for example. There's nothing like truly defensive, just trying to take hits for this entire team. It's gonna be kind of just spread out all over the place. But there's like just barely enough bulk on these mons that they can like take a certain hit and then start trying to snowball from there. So it's going to be probably more of an issue in some matchups than others, but the games aren't going to go very long for this team, I feel. Alright, next up, we have, in second place, Bob Roomba, who drafted first picked Mega Starmie, who does incorrectly have 1,330 special attack.
What do you mean? That's totally correct.
Caleb.
Anyways, and then absolutely threw without the Omega. So, but it's a really good team aside from whatever this thing's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal was just to get as many points back. If you're planning to just bring Starmie Mega pretty much every week, I can buy that. I'm not sold on Starmie Mega yet. I'll be interested to see how it does. It's not that strong. Like, huge power is pretty nasty, but there are ways around it. It's susceptible to being burned, and it's fast, but it's not the fastest. I do think that being able to make use of a mixed set is where the advantage might lie with that mon, and where I might be underestimating it. I will say that getting to first pick Starmie Mega and getting to first pick Genesect, which is the other borderline probably could have stayed banned mon, is where I feel like maybe we have to revisit how we're running this kind of draft. But I think that combination is really smart. I think Genesect is like the fire weakness is basically the only thing that you can knock it for, and so immediately picking a strong water type that can handle fire types is a good combination there. And the versatility that you get with Genesect, even though it doesn't have the craziest stats, the move pool, the fact that it can run its Technoblast as coverage, depending on if you're willing to give up your item, or even just the setup plus download, boosting its stats quite high, makes it a real threat. On top of that, you have Terrain. I think Terrain fits well here. I think a lot of the mons appreciate the healing from grass, like Raging Bolt, for example, which does kind of want to stick around and be bulky. I think overall this team has a good balance of threats and defense. It has a lot of niche options like Ditto, Shuckle, Wobbuffet, that even though they're low point mons, you can bring them and they can do what they're supposed to, and it can be a real problem if you're not ready for them. So there's just a lot. Like, if you had to fight this team 3 times, you could see them bringing 3 different groupings of 6 mons each time, which some of the other teams I don't think would be able to do.
Yeah, as far as it goes on this team, it's... Most teams have like 1 to 2 very good breakers. This team has like 6. You got Janisek, you got Raging Bolt, you got Rillaboom himself. Then Hawlucha, who will eat a grassy seed from Rillaboom and become unburdened, and that I don't want to deal with. Blacephalon with a Scarf, and then of course, Starmie Mega. So as far as it goes, these guys, you never want to switch in on these guys. They're a problem when it comes to it. They're game-ending win guns. But there is some solace in that this team drops pretty significantly with its defense. Because the defensive backbone is looking like Galarian Weezing, Crocodile, Shuckle, Wobbuffet, Audino, if you ever. It's got some useful pieces, but it's not a crazy defensive core. Some of the potential issues I see is that this team is, possibly vulnerable to strong ground spam with only 3 answers. Strong dark spam can be a problem for this team. The 4 answers that are only half resistant. Obviously, flying will cut through this team. And as far as it goes, recovery outside of Mega Audino of all things can feel a little bit shaky at times. I think this team relies heavily on the offensive tempo instead of safe defensive cycling. That being said, this team is full of problems because you gotta prep for Ditto reverse sweeps, Wobbuffet trapping, Sticky Web from Shuckle, Hawlucha terrain abuse, Genesect, Raging Bolt, Blacephalon, Crocodile utility variants. The amount of you lose if you forget this possibility pressure in this team is absolutely ridiculous. That being said, one of my biggest concerns is that this is a very limited long game consistency team. It excels at forcing trades, snowballing, and matchup exploitation, but against very fat balances, regen cores, a lot of hazard stacking, or dedicated weather, this team might actually see some struggle.
I think Ditto is actually super good in this format, if only because it can feel like having a second Mega on your team. It can feel like having a second super busted 20-pointer like Genesect or Iron Valiant sometimes. And it also just completely prevents setup, because you don't want your to be completely set up and then get hit with a Ditto. So it kind of limits Swords Dance Nasty Plot type setups. Crocodile is actually the only mon on this team that doesn't appreciate the grassy terrain from Rillaboom entirely because of limit Earthquake power. But everything else will appreciate a little bit of healing. It's kind of one of the most splashable things you can do for a team, is just give everything a little bit of healing. Let's see. Hawlucha it exists. I'm not sure how scared of it people really should be. It still only has 92 base attack. It's not it's nowhere near the biggest threat on this team. It's it can be stopped by stuff that will stop probably Starmie for the most part. So I don't foresee it being as high impact as maybe you were making it out to be, Steve. But it's a really good team with really good top tiers and a bunch of wacky back-end picks that are going to catch someone out who's bad at team building like myself. So I fear this team immensely. Alright, finally, at number 1, we have Steve. You did it, man. You got second pick in both slots. You got Process and Nagano. I don't know how much else you need.
Honestly, I don't know what you people are on, but please share some with me. Because I don't know how I got to number 1 in these rankings. I kind of put myself actually in like a B tier, but yeah, I can kind of explain my thought on this. I mean, a lot of my teams I played in the past weren't quite what I was going for with this one. I was going for a high volatility, high snowball team. I mean, this thing, I was thinking it's got ridiculous speed pressures. It's got multiple snowball sweepers. It's got strong forcing power, extremely good anti-offense capability. Like, you know, the snow options for Arctivision, Titan, Zoroark, Hisui. I've wanted to use Illusion for so long with this thing in order to try a mind game. That might be pending. I might do some really silly things. So I gave up a lot of my defensive structure in order to make this much more of a hyper offense team, which is something I'm not used to.
I just like this team. It just feels like it has. It's what I look for in like the ideal draft team. It has a little bit of everything. Just has options for any team, which I think is probably the most important in draft. You can't really overlook any mon on this team when you're in builder, unless you have like a particularly good matchup into something. But you have to be worried about the snow core. But even something like Mega Bro, which is obviously not the same kind of threat as Frostlass, you can't ignore it because it has those weird setup sets, or it's going to try and do something that just demands a check. And there's just quite a few things on here that are like that. You can outspeed anyone with Regieleki, which just feels like a nice counter to a lot of things like weather speed abuse or even the electric terrain that we saw on Schnarfy's team. I agree with Zoroark. I think if you're putting more planning into it, it can be really hard to deal with because you just never know if you're going to be hit by something that looks like Zoroark or if it's actually Zoroark. Whimsicott with Prankster has cool things that it can do. Hazards, honestly, you would argue that hazards aren't very good because you don't have a lot of setters, but Tinglu is probably the best in the game, just given how bulky it is. It can just ignore quite a few different things, either physically or specially, which also helps. And then you have decent removal as well, with a really fast spinner and a Prankster defog. So the team just doesn't have many holes, which I think will lead to the opportunity for it to be any other team and potentially have good favorable rematches in the case of playoffs, which is quite valuable.
Yeah, this is, like, on the face of it, just, like, kind of ticks a lot of boxes. You have every single slot is something that you have to be prepared for. Like, Prankster, Whimsicott, Phalanx getting a no retreat off at the right time, this mini snow core that you've built, Zoroark kind of messing with your mind completely. Tinglu, even though it's like the only like real defensive option, is a very solid one that can do enough of a job to set something else in a good position. This is also, I think, the fastest team overall. The sheer amount of speed you have, not just Regieleki, but Naganadel, Mega Frostlass, Whimsicott, Zoroark, Kartana. You have so much stuff that can outspeed, that can wear a scarf and just outspeed even harder. It's a very overwhelming team because going first is so important in Pokemon. And then, like, even Mega Slowbro, if you want to leave it in the base form and just not have an item so it takes less damage from knockoff, that's a perfectly valid strat, and can make it so you kind of play mind games a little bit with, if you want to bring dual Megas, you theoretically could. And then you also look at the matchup chart, and the only, like, overwhelming problem would be a slight rock weakness. But other than that, I'm seeing a lot of green down there on the matchup chart. Hazards, like Papa said, only one real setter, but it's a really good one. And ideally, you don't give a ton of turns to remove the hazards. You've got enough removal. Why does Cartana get defog? I forgot that's a thing. Why? But yeah, it's just a really solid threats from all around type of team, to where you're going to win probably at least 2 or 3 games, almost purely because someone didn't prep for one of the 6 mons you're going to bring, and they're just not going to have the right answer for it. Alright, I think that's it from all of us. Unless you guys have anything else you want to say before we wrap this video up, which has been going on 1 hour and 10 minutes, dear God.
Hey, it's, 12 teams, a lot of time to get through.
I hope this is a fun season. Hope it was worth restarting. Maybe by the time we finish, they'll have added the rest of the megas, and then we can do it again.
Oh, hell yeah.
I look forward to this season really much, and like you said, if they add all the megas by time the season is done and we do this again, I'll be on board.
I think what's really funny is we don't have any super bulky teams. Like, we kept talking about how teams wouldn't last that long. There's not a lot of teams built to last that long. We include so many offensive threats that it's going to be just dynamite games back and forth, just throwing mons at each other.
Yeah, I feel like there's a possibility that a game lasts like 24 turns and then it ends by like 32. Like, that's just how we're gonna see it.
Like, we've had some classic games in ODL where we could go like 50 turns, 70 turns. I don't know if we're gonna get a single one of those this season. I think we'll be lucky to get a game that hits 40 turns. There's just so many offensive teams.
I don't think I saw a single stall team in here, so it's probably just going to be action-packed.
I don't know, I didn't think I was gonna PP stall Agent. That one time we fought, it was like 4 million turns, and I wanted to just go to sleep.
Hey, listen, all-timer game if only the replay didn't get purged. I hate it.
Yeah,
If
sad.
only.
Alright. Well, that wraps up about what I've got.
All right.
Thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, especially sticking around all the way to the end. Make sure to stick around. I'm going to be recording all my games. Going to try to get back to that habit. And doing weekly recaps. So, expect frequent content from this channel coming soon. And I will see you guys then. Take care.
See you later.
Bye.